There's death, there's destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live.
This is why we need independent media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Hard Lens Media. This is an exclusive sit-down interview with Jon Stasevich, who is running as an independent for president in 2024. Not green, not libertarian, non-party affiliate. That's what he's running for. And we here at Hard Lens Media are in full support of independents and, yes, to an extent, third parties for running for office. Now more than ever, the two-party system has been screwing us over. And this is going to be a no-holds-bar, unapologetic interview with Jon. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Pleasure. I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. Mm-hmm. I know that the community that you're talking to is well-informed. Mm-hmm. I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about the problems. You do it every night. Mm-hmm. And I think most of the people recognize the problems that are out there. You know, I recently had my campaign manager ask me to go out and shake some hands, kiss some babies, and get some pictures for the website. So I did, and I had one of my friends come out, and he was going to be my photographer. He was going to take the pictures. He anticipated I would get out there and get all kinds of resistance. I live in a pretty exclusive area of Michigan, okay? It's a resort area, and we have a cross-section of people, but it's a Republican area, primarily. Okay. My neighbor is Betsy DeVos. Gives you an idea. You mentioned Betsy DeVos, and so that gives you an idea of the type of area I'm in. So we go downtown, and I start engaging people. Out of the dozen people that we engaged, 10 of them, after the engagement, said, "I'm with you." Now, these are Republicans, independents, and Democrats. Mm-hmm. Mostly Republicans. Isn't that interesting?
Yes. Now, the thing is, the pushback you always hear about third parties or independents is, you're going to cause problems. You're the troublemaker. You're the person that's going to cause the next Trump to get into office. So when people hear the word of an independent candidate or a third party, so let's face it, the Greens and Libertarians are going to throw their hats in the ring as well for 2024. We saw them do it in 2016, which I say was far better than the attempt that they did in 2020. But you know they'll do it in 2024, and you're going to be part of that group too. We also see how Andrew Yang is doing his Forward Party, which I call into question some of his policies there because he can't give a straight answer on CNN. But nonetheless, there's always this propaganda, this story, these talking points that we hear from corporate media and diehard Democratic voters and diehard Republican voters that believe the mythology, the legend, that third parties, independents, are nothing but trouble and it can't be done. Now is not your time. You have to wait. What do you say to that?
Well, on a part, now is not your time. I would say my experience in Boyne City when I went in there and interviewed people tells me just the opposite. Now is the time. Mm-hmm. Everyone that I engage, the problem for third parties has always been, how do you get out there? How do you get your voice heard, right? Censorship is a big part of the problem, obviously. In the mainstream media, they control the conversation, and that's the way they censor. So by controlling the conversation and taking you where they want to go, that automatically eliminates any other voice, right? So the challenge for a third party or for an independent is to have your voice heard. Right. One of the reasons I decided to run was because I felt the timing was right. There isn't anyone I talk to that doesn't see the injustice, understand the problems. We're part of the same team. We're part of humanity. And anyone that's ever worked with a team, whether it's a sports team, a team of scientists, unless you've got everybody on the same page and well organized, you're not likely to succeed. As a society, as a nation, if we want to succeed and prosper, we have to be united, working together, cooperatively, collaboratively, okay? But what do we see? Right. We have people who are more divided than I've seen in my entire life, and I'm 71. I have never seen this kind of division. We've got people who are so divided and angry about it that when they turn 18 years old, they're willing to pick up an AR-15.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. They're willing to pick up an AR-15, walk into a classroom, and blow away a bunch of children and teachers. So it's not, the division has gotten to the point where it's extremely dangerous. Now, if we look at third parties, I voted for Jill Stein. I support third parties. I'd like to see other parties. Problem is, they've never succeeded. They haven't made it. And so that's one question. So why do we think that in 2024 it's going to be different? Is a third party likely to get into the White House? Now, the White House, that's the president. He's the executive. He sets the direction. He sets the tone. He has the veto power. He has the soapbox. That's not likely to happen with a third party based on the history. However, and it's never happened with an independent.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I decided to run as an independent is because I'm not attached to any particular interest group. I'm not attached to unions. I'm not attached to third parties. I'm not attached to lobbyists and corporations. And I'm certainly not attached to the two major parties who are completely corrupted by the big money.
Right.
So that's one aspect of it. And then the other question is, let's suppose a third party does succeed. We've got two parties that are both corrupted.
Yep.
Are we to believe that a third party wouldn't possibly be corrupted as well? Okay.
Sure.
So I could work for a third party. I could have gone through a third party to try to do this. But I felt for that top spot, I can't just win with the progressive base, even though most progressives should automatically be on my side. There should be no question. When they understand my agenda, they're going to be with me. Everyone I talk to is with me.
Okay.
Right? And so there is no one out there. In fact, I challenge everyone. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Green Party, it doesn't matter. Let's get on stage together. In fact, I'm going to have a YouTube channel, and I'm going to host people to come on stage with me. And we're going to have discussions about this.
Now, when you're talking about doing a social media outreach, I mean, obviously the first thing you need to do to get your name out there, and I think starting early like this is a smart move. You need to get on independent media. You were on Sabrina Savini's show, and I saw that interview as well, and I think that needs to happen. We need to see independents, and to some extent third-party candidates, but independents, show up on progressive media, independent media. But how much further are you willing to go out there? Because every time we see somebody like try and challenge the system, one of the things that I've always wanted to criticize towards third parties is you're not showing up on independent media, but you're also not showing up on other large platforms. Are you open to go not only on independent media, but some of our fellow colleagues in independent media, but would you also even go on some of the mainstream media outlets too to get your message out there? That even includes controversial people like Tucker Carlson, who has a very large audience. But I mean, I'd
love to go on Tucker's show.
Okay.
I don't agree with Tucker on anything.
Right.
Well, practically nothing.
Right. That's what everybody.
There are some areas where he seems to want to get to the truth, but we know he's just manipulating the audience.
Right.
He wants the clicks. But no, I will do anything I can to get my voice heard. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I did start early. And the reason I started early is because I know the history and I understand the challenges on an independent basis.
Right.
So on my website, when you go there, the biggest issue I have immediately is ballot access. So there's a form, and people can go to that site, fill out the form. Mm-hmm. And so I'm starting to understand how many people in these different states are going to sign their petition, their state's petition, to get me on the ballot.
Okay.
I've already been at this for 6 months. Okay. And I'm just starting to hit mainstream media. But that's one part of the game. The other part is getting into the streets. So I'm going to look at people who've done it successfully. Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. He had people in the streets going door to door. I worked on his campaign in 2016 and in 2020. I made my own graphics. I had all the bullet points down. I knew the conversation. And I went to public areas like the post office. Boy, people are coming in and out of the post office constantly. And I would engage. And I went door to door, and I did the phone banking. So my campaign needs to do all of that. So I'm putting together my campaign team. I've got a fabulous person who's my campaign manager. I've got a fabulous person who's taking care of all public communications. So I'm starting to put the team together that can pull this off. But getting that ballot access is the key initiative up front.
Now, I want to ask you, because, again, I've asked this to people who are part of the Illinois Green Party, Illinois Libertarian Party. You may not know this, but probably you're going to be dealing with other states that are similar to Illinois. Illinois has some of the most harshest draconian laws for third-party candidates, even independents. And what I mean by this is if you're a Democrat or Republican, you need to get on the ballot. You need at least 2,000 signatures, maybe 5,000 if you really want to go that far. But if you're libertarian or green, independent like yourself, you're going to need 20,000, 30,000 to secure
In Michigan, it's 35.
35. Wow. Well, again, but then you got to double it because then you know you're going to have some Republican or Democratic accountability person trying to cross off names.
Right.
What legal actions are you prepared to do to make sure that your name is on all 50 states so that anyone that wants to vote for you can do that? What is your plan to make sure that you're successfully on there? Because I know that Dr. Jill Stein in 2016 successfully gone, I believe, 46 to 48 of the states in the 2016 general election. Mm-hmm. What's your plan to secure that amount or higher?
Well, I mean, again, my plan is the same that the others had. In terms of legal, well, so I'm going to have a grassroots campaign. It's got to be door to door. It's got to be people. So when you say, how am I going to do it? The real question is, how are we going to do it? Okay. I find that the people that understand what I'm trying to accomplish are very excited about it. Almost everyone in my campaign now is volunteer. I'm not going to end up like Trump and like Biden. They spent $2.4 billion in the last election. 2.4, that means 1.2 apiece. I'm not going to get that kind of money. But I don't want the money. I want the votes. I want the volunteer work. That's why I developed the website. That's why I'm asking people to come on board. And so people are going to have to be excited enough to share the message. Now, I do think this is different than it was in 2016 and in 2020. Coming through COVID, really, the cracks opened up. Everyone sees the problems. Everyone knows that we're heading in the wrong direction. It's not hard to convince people that the United States of America is going in the wrong direction, not just the United States, but the entire world. Okay, we've got some existential threats. One is we're walking up to the edge of another world war in the nuclear age. That's insanity. Okay? We've got issues with the environment, pollution, the climate. There's another one. You cannot solve that problem independently as a nation. We can't do it ourselves. So not only do we have to be united in tackling that challenge, we have to unite the rest of the world. And that's what I intend to do. That's what we're going to do. So I'm telling people, if you get me into the White House, we're not going to adversarially approach the world. We're going to approach them cooperatively and collaboratively because we need them and they need us and they know it. Okay? I'm not just satisfied with, if I were to change the system to the point where every human in the United States can achieve their fullest potential,
right,
as individuals. That's a strong team. But we can't stop there. We have to take that and go beyond our borders. We have to unite the world. Okay? We're currently not a member of the International Criminal Court. So we talk about war crimes and talk about going after Putin. Okay? Which, I mean, the Ukrainian war, I would argue, and a lot of scholars do, who are in geopolitics, that was an avoidable war to begin with.
Agreed.
But you've heard our leaders talk about going after Putin for war crimes. How are you going to do that? You don't even support the International Criminal Court. And why don't we? Maybe we have a few war crimes under our belt, too. In fact, I would argue every darn U.S. president we've had is a war criminal.
Then let me ask you this, because this is important to me and to a lot of people who believe in free speech and a free press. Because it's easy for everyone to say, oh, yeah, I'm for it. But I want to hear your reasoning for this answer. Julian Assange, he is wrongly behind bars in the Belmarsh prison. He exposed U.S. war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. WikiLeaks has, again, a very strong record. Never once had they had to recant a story, unlike what Cenk Uygur says about WikiLeaks. They have a clear, clean, good record. Are you for the freedom and pardoning of Julian Assange? And where do you stand on free speech, especially for the press? Are you for it? And are you for Julian Assange to be pardoned?
Well, Julian Assange should never have been arrested in the first place. I look at him as a hero. Okay. I want people to expose war crimes. We punish whistleblowers now. I want to shine a light on them. I want to put them out front and treat them like the heroes they are. When you expose a crime, you don't go after the person that's exposing and bringing out the truth. You go after the criminals, right? But we're in a corrupt system. Everybody knows that. There is no question. Well, I would argue that we have a one-party political system disguised as a two-party system because they're both funded by the same oligarchy, okay? We're engaged in a class war. And so there's that 1%, and then there's 99% of us. So when we look out at the world, a lot of us identify the problems. We complain about the problems. But where is the real problem? You know, look in the mirror. Right. Every American out there needs to look in the mirror and say, and they have to ask themselves, am I willing to get the world I want rather than accept the one that I know is unjust?
All right. Now, I think it's important that you made your case for why you want to run as an independent. I like your answer for Julian Assange. I believe that he's a hero, too, an example of what it means to be a journalist. Then let's talk about policy issues. And I want to combine them all because, again, I want to really just get your thoughts on them. Where do you stand for Medicare for all, student debt forgiveness, medical debt forgiveness? Where do you stand on climate change, money in politics? And on top of that, too, where do you stand on, again, abolishing? Are you for the abolishment of all political parties?
Political parties are like tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Tribes separate people. Mm-hmm. Okay? I see no reason for a political party. I would like to have citizen candidates. You know? And we've always had two parties, and we've always had people that are divided. And what do? They get angry, and they blame one another. Now, so they've got hate in their heart, anger. To begin with, that's self-destructive. Every psychologist, every doctor will tell you that that pumps up the adrenaline and the cortisol. And over the long haul, it's destructive to you as a human being, let alone the person you're directing that anger towards. And so when you have that kind of division and the tribalism that we have with our party system, it destroys your society. It destroys your ability to function to solve the real problems that we face. Well, we know that two-party system, the propaganda is really to direct us away from the core issue. So the core issue, see, I like to go to the source of the problem. So as an example, if you live in a house and all of a sudden you notice water on the ceiling, you don't just go to any pipe in the house, you go right to the source and you replace that section of pipe, don't you? You go to where the problem is. Well, what's the problem in our society? It's a system. It's an economic system called capitalism. So I'd like to dive a little into my perspective on capitalism. Capitalism is inefficient. It's ineffective. It's unjust. It's destructive. It's unstable. And it's unsustainable. So let me explain what I mean by that. Ineffective and inefficient. Let's imagine that you're in the business of building automobiles. And let's say that we have the technology to build a vehicle that could go 5 million miles. Okay? Best engineering minds come together, build that kind of vehicle. If you built that, when would that customer return? He would never. You'd be out of business, right? And so they have planned obsolescence. What does that mean? That means that they want a car that's going to need to be replaced so they can maintain their profit. They need that profit to survive. It's not their fault. They're just doing what the system instructs them to do. If they didn't do it, they'd be out of business. So they may have the technology to build the best stuff, but they don't do it because they can't. So do we want to blame the individuals that are stuck in a system that forces them to mine the earth more than they should, not recycle, not do the things that we could do? So in capitalism, I think of it as an equation. On the one side of that equal sign is profit. And in capitalism, on the other side, it's whatever it takes. Okay? There's nothing on the other side about human health, the health of our communities, the health of our children, or what are we going to leave for future generations.
Right.
It's an unbalanced equation. It's a destructive equation. That's why it's destructive. It's destroying the earth. It's destroying our environment that we depend upon for our very lives. It's marching us to the edge of nuclear war. Because guess what? Military industrial complex, we've known for centuries why they're in business, to make a profit. Capitalism was developed, I think it was 1772, Wealth of Nations, that Adam Smith wrote. Okay? We were coming out of feudalism. Maybe at that time, maybe it made some sense. Coming out of feudalism, yes, it was a step up for humanity. But we are still operating under a system that's centuries old. Now, if that system were effective, would we still have homelessness? Would we still have poverty? Mass starvation in areas of the world? Would we have such an inefficient transportation system? We have the technology, maybe like China has, to connect our cities with bullet trains.
And I've been on a bullet train in Japan, and I have to say they're extremely efficient.
Right. So you're moving people efficiently in a clean way, correct? So we've got the technology. We have the answers. And when it comes to human health, we have the answers there too. We've been studying, I've studied developmental psychology, cognitive psychology, and behavioral psychology. Why did I do that? Because I had kids to raise. I wanted to make sure that they got everything they needed so they could succeed in life. I'm at a stage now where they're on their own. They're doing fine. I've got a son that is a biophysicist that's done incredible things that nobody's ever done. And my daughter's a speech pathologist. So not only do they support themselves and their family, my 5 grandchildren, they also contribute back to society. So my son is doing things with biophysics that are changing our world.
So then, and it's quite clear you have a criticism towards capitalism. So I want to kind of go back then to the first part of my question. Where do you stand with then Medicare for all, UBI, student debt forgiveness? Where do you stand on these policy issues? Because for a lot of people, they're universally popular amongst Republican and Democratic voters, not politicians.
That's right.
Voters.
That's right.
Where does your campaign stand on those issues?
Okay, so we talked about, you also mentioned student debt.
Yeah, student debt.
As president, at the stroke of a pen, it's gone.
Your executive order.
Executive order.
And any president can do that.
Gone. You know, now in Germany, they don't charge their kids. They don't put them in debt to get an education. They know their kids, by investing in their kids, they know they're going to get a return on their investment. You want every kid to be well educated. That way they can contribute like my kids did. I don't want that just for my kids. I want that for every kid. You've heard this No Child Left Behind. I agree with that, but that's not what they meant. When I say no child left behind, I mean we need an integrated approach to human health. So we need dental, mental, physical. We need all of the health services. And we need to invest in education and make sure every kid gets a world-class education. And it's not like it's not being done. It's being done in other places of the world. When you look at the objective outcomes and compare us to other nations of the world, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already being done. We're very low in every major category, whether it's health. Now, what about the financial aspect of healthcare? Okay. How do we fare out there? Well, we spend about $12,000 per capita. And in the last census, we had 332 million people in the United States. Based on objective healthcare outcomes, every study that's ever been done studying healthcare systems throughout the world places the U.S. at the very bottom. The very bottom. There is no other developed country that does a worse job for their population than the United States. I'll use Germany as an example, but you could pick Germany, France, most Northern European countries. You could pick Japan. Every other country that rates number 1, 2, or 3, they do it for $6,000 per capita. Let's think about that. $6,000 we could save by just copying someone else. And I think we could do better than they do. But just copying, we'd save $6,000 per capita 332 million people times 10 years. You know how much money that is in savings? Every decade, $18 trillion. What is our national debt? 31 trillion about? Mm-hmm. So if we could save $18 trillion every decade and invest that in the health of our people, how would that transform our nation? Okay. So it isn't, do I support it? It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer once you look at it. Whether you look at it from an economics perspective or a human health perspective, it's a no-brainer.
So Medicare for all, student debt forgiveness. And again, by the way, for everyone watching at home, Medicare for all and student debt forgiveness, as well as cannabis legalization, can all be done with a stroke of a pen by executive order. Any president, from Biden to Trump to Obama to Clinton to Bush Jr., Bush Sr., Reagan, any one of them could have done it through executive order. So it's quite clear you're in support of it. UBI, I would assume, as well, or do you have a different
so number one, if I'm successful, and if I can convince the public, the voting public, that the vision that I'm painting is far superior to what anyone else is doing, if I can get them to volunteer to work for my campaign, I don't need a lot of money. I know money is tight for so many people. I mean, those that can afford it, yes, contribute. I do have to travel. We took some money to travel here. Right. So far, I pretty much mostly have funded my own campaign, but I'm not wealthy. I'm a working class guy. I started working when I was in 7th grade, delivering newspapers. Maybe it was 6th grade. Anyway, I've been working my entire life. There isn't anything that you could probably think of that I haven't done at some point.
So then there's a two-part question, because I know that we do have in our show notes the link to your campaign website, and I would like us to at least pull that up so our viewers and subscribers can see that. This is how people can join your campaign, is where people can find it. Number one, when we look at the history of third-party candidates, you know, I think a lot of people forget that Lincoln, the Republican Party, started off as a third party. Now, of course, it was a political party, independent. Lincoln managed to make an impact. And then when we look at other independent candidates, they were part of third parties as well. You had Theodore Roosevelt was the Bull Moose Party. You had Ross Perot. And, of course, you had Ralph Nader.
Right. And
I also want to include Dr. Jill Stein with the Green Party, too. And I'm not trying to throw shade at the Greens, or the Libertarians. But, again, you know, the two Green Party candidates, Ralph Nader and Jill Stein specifically, were vilified by the media for being the candidate that caused so much trouble, which is not true at all. What is the overall legacy that you want your campaign as an independent, non-party affiliate to be for the American people and for future generations to follow through on? What do you want to be your overall impact for the 2024 election cycle?
Well, the campaign itself, my message is a positive message. And I'm not getting defensive when people attack me. Everybody knows there are a lot of lies out there. If somebody comes to me with a direct question, of course I'm going to answer it. But my answer it's going to be on my website. It's going to be in these videos. All of the answers are going to be there. Anyone that cares to look. How are we going to get them to look? That's where the American people, those supporters of mine, have got to get active. And they have to knock on those doors. And they have to pick up the phone. And you start with your family, and you start with your friends, and we're going to have a grassroots campaign. I'm going to use everything in the electronic media I can use. Okay? But you need it both. You need both of them. So when Michigan says they need 35,000 people signing a ballot access petition, I don't want 35,000. I want 235,000. Okay? I want to overwhelm them. You elect me, I'll be an activist president. I'm not just going to sit in the White House. I'm going to get in the streets. And any public servant in Washington that claims to want to represent us, that doesn't go for the people's agenda, I'm going into the streets to remove them in their district. And I'm going to have, if I get elected, I'll have the support base to do it. Okay? So I'm leaving nothing to chance. Nothing. We're going to change this nation, and we're going to change the world.
It's very rare that I say this, but your message resonates with something that I was feeling from 2016 and onward. And doing this show for a very long time, I've interviewed a lot of people. I'm very curious to see what your campaign will be doing, and I will be keeping a very close eye on it. And so I want to say this live on air here on Rockfin, but as for our viewers who know that we are also on YouTube as well, I would like to do a follow-up interview with you in the next couple of months to see what's happening with your campaign.
Kit,
Now,
we spent a lot of time together.
Now, I understand you drove out here. Now, whether it's online or you come back here in the studio, it would be an honor to do another follow-up interview with you and your campaign.
I'll make a deal with you.
To really, okay, what's
You
the
come
deal?
on my show, I'll come on yours. I'd like to have you on a panel.
So
When I get my channel up, I want a panel of people. I want to open the discussion because we know there is no discussion, right? So I need to open the discussion. I don't have all the answers. I love it when somebody challenges me. You know why? It's an opportunity for me to find out if I've got it right. Because if I don't, I want to learn about that very quickly so I can adapt and change. We have smart people everywhere, intelligent people who know what to do. It's getting them. So one of the values of me understanding human psychology is that I think I'm pretty good at communicating, and I think I can get people to understand what we need to do. So the basic principle of cognitive human psychology is that we as human beings, we don't act in accordance with the truth. We act in accordance with the truth as we believe it. Okay? So then you have to ask yourself, where do those beliefs come from? Well, they come from all sorts of sources. Mom and dad, obviously, your teachers, your community, your friends, and the media. Now, with a corrupted political system, we know what we get out of the media. Everything to distract us from the major problem. You notice that both Trump and the Democratic Party leadership, Nancy Pelosi, didn't she say we're all capitalists now?
Yes, we're all capitalists.
We're all capitalists now. You're right. And how's it working out for us? Well, I know how it's been working out for my lifetime. We've seen real wages decline. Okay? Now, let's compare us to, say, China. You realize in China that over the last 25 years, the livable wage has quadrupled? You wonder why the Chinese people support their leadership? And I have another question about a representative. How can a professional politician that's never actually worked represent a working person? They can't because they haven't done it. I've been a working guy my entire life. That's all I did. I worked to support my family. That's why I didn't get involved in politics, not because I didn't know there were problems. I had to support my family. I had to live with the system, but I'm at a different place in life now. Now I know I can make the difference. Now I know I can do something. I can change things, and that's what I intend to do. That's why I started running. But, so those people who have these beliefs that are false beliefs, okay, they think it's the truth. Like everybody knows a third-party candidate can't become president. Everyone knows that. Now, when you know that, how are you going to act? Because we act in accordance with not the truth. The truth is we believe it. I know an independent can't win the presidency, so then why would I invest my time in working for his campaign or supporting him? Because we know it can't happen. I know we can't get an independent as a president because it's a rigged system. I'm powerless. These are beliefs, nothing to do with the truth. The fact of the matter is that we're in a class war, and the 1% has the ownership, enough ownership to control all of the production and the distribution of goods and services. Okay? So it's that ownership model concentrated, which is what capitalism always does. We have put so many Band-Aids on capitalism over the years trying to fix it. And it never has worked. So we have to transition. So we have to have a plan. How do you transition safely? Like some people are going to say, listen, I don't want to lose my job. I need my job. I depend on the system. So, John, how are you going to? There's plenty of work to do. You know, we could make the government the employer of last resort. If the private sector can't keep our people working so they can support their families, then the government will do it. We can change the ownership model. I'd like to nationalize the banking system. I want to see a public banking system that would support cooperatives, much like Richard Wolff talks about. I want the employees that actually do the work to have ownership. Okay? Now, if you were an owner, Would you outsource your job to China to make more profit? I don't think so. Would you pollute your community? I don't think so. But a guy sitting on Wall Street in New York, no problem, in a heartbeat.
And those are the same people that donate to politicians and make the system happen.
The system is owned by them. They took their wealth they concentrated the media with their concentrated wealth, and they bought the political system. So we have zero representation. And you know that Princeton study showed that we basically have 0.0016% of what we want based on the polls. All of those things like Medicare for all. Everybody wants that for their children. Who wants the child to, I lost my job, my child no longer has health care. What happens if he gets cancer? Oh, well, then the family goes bankrupt. I was a registered nurse. I worked at U of M on neurology unit. I had a patient, he was 42 years old. He had lost his job about 2.5 years prior to, okay? He went on Cobra. Money ran low. He went off Cobra, and he gets diagnosed with a glioblastoma. That's essentially a death sentence, right? There's nothing we could do to save him. We could keep him alive. He had 4 children and a wife. Not only were they going to lose their father, but the medical bills, because they had no insurance, were so high, it was going to bankrupt the family. So they're going to lose their family, and we're going to put a family out in the street? What kind of system allows that to happen? What kind of people would support that system? You have to be insane. You'd have to be insane not to support my platform. I have not run into a person that I engage that when I get right down into the nitty-gritty and we start looking at the stats and we look at how things work, I've not met the person that says, you're wrong. I've met a few that won't engage.
So I think as a final note for this, if our viewers who are watching right now via online or anywhere else on any platform, where can they go to learn more about your campaign? Where can they find you online for something?
So my website is under development.
All right. We
It
do
doesn't
have it
look
up,
as
though.
professional, but remember, I'm the only one funding this right now.
Can we pull it up real quick before we end this interview? I want to make sure that he has his website properly represented. Again, still under construction, but again, Jon Stasevich for President 2024.
Right.
I urge everyone to check it out. John, I would be honored to have you back on our show for a follow-up. And yes, I will show up on your show, on your panel. You named a date and time, and I will show up there.
You've got a deal, my friend.
All right. With that being said, I want to thank, first of all, our guests for joining us here at Hard Lens Media. If you want to learn more about Hard Lens Media, check out our website, hardlensmedia.com. Yeah, we are, again, a show that's produced here at 99 Perspective Studios here in the city of Chicago. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Please follow John's campaign as well. John will be returning back onto our show because now more than ever, we need people to speak up and stand up against the two-party system and fight for a better future. Thank you again for being on our show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Peace, everyone.
Views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this broadcast platform, Hard Lens Media, or its parent company or affiliates.